You may have realized that being healthy feels different than it did in the past now that you're over 50. If you want to maximize your health potential but don't have time to read through overwhelming pages of Google links, this is the show for you. Welcome to Healthy Tips After 50. We love doing the research, finding solutions, talking to health experts, and learning what works and what doesn't. Now, your host. She spent the last 25 years dedicated to feeling her best and is here to share her best findings with you, Susan Rosen.
Welcome. I'm your host, Susan Rosen. Today I'm going to talk about strokes. All of this information I got from the American Heart Association. We'll be covering what strokes are, how to prevent them, and most importantly, there's some very important information that could help you help someone you love, yourself, or even a stranger on the street to survive a stroke. First, let's talk about the two different kinds of strokes. The ischemic stroke is caused by a clot blocking an artery, and these account for 87% of all strokes. There's a smaller part of this group as well that's called transient ischemic attacks, or TIAs, which are caused by a temporary blockage. The second kind of stroke, hemorrhagic, is caused by a ruptured artery in the brain. Okay, so that gets that dry part of it over. Now we're going to get into some really interesting things. This next fact really surprised me. 80% of all strokes are preventable if you eat a healthy diet, stay physically active, and control the following risk factors in particular: smoking, obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure. It turns out almost half of the adults in the U.S. have high blood pressure, which makes it the most common controllable risk factor. Having multiple of these risk factors is also one of the biggest reasons cited for why more people in their 30s and 40s are having strokes these days. But that's a much bigger issue, and we're here to talk about strokes. So the next section that we're going to talk about are the many different symptoms that are warning signs of a stroke. And these symptoms include face drooping, which usually is one side or area of the face droops while the rest of it stays normal. Arm weakness, and that would be people dropping things, or if you can't raise your arm. Speech difficulty, slurring, or some other difficulty in talking. Then there's a bunch of them here, 4 in fact, that are all things that come on very suddenly. So sudden numbness, which could be anywhere in your body, sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes, a sudden severe headache, and sudden trouble walking. The medical and health community has created an acronym with the first letters of a few of these symptoms to help all of us recognize when we need to help someone who's having a stroke. That acronym is FAST, F-A-S-T. The F is for face drooping. The A is for arm weakness. The S is for speech difficulty. And the T is for time to call 911. We all need to remember this acronym because we could help save a loved one, a friend, or more likely a stranger. As in 2/3 of all cases, it's a bystander who recognizes what's happening and calls for help. So it's very, very important that you make a note of this and keep it in the back of your mind. So if you see somebody, you can go and help them. Calling 911 is very important. Don't try and drive someone to the hospital yourself, and most especially, don't do that if the person having the symptoms is you. That's the last thing you need to be doing. The ambulance and first responders are trained to start immediate treatment, which you and I obviously can't do. There's also a drug available to medical personnel and most of the hospitals, which can dissolve clots if the person who's having the stroke gets this medication within a 3 to 4 hour time period after the stroke starts. So you can see why getting to the hospital as fast as possible is so important, which means that calling 911 can make all the difference in how disabled you, your loved one, or someone else who's having the stroke will end up being after they come out of all of this. So remember to think fast when you or someone else starts showing any of these signs of a stroke, and call 911 to get to the hospital fast. I really hope that none of us ever needs to make use of these facts, but it really only takes one time to make all of this worthwhile. This could literally save the life of someone you love or your own life. If you know someone who could benefit from learning the stroke information, please share the show with them. And I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a comment about this episode wherever you're listening to the show, or at my website, healthytipsafter50.com. Let me know if you found the show helpful and if you've had an experience yourself of helping someone who was having a stroke. Also, please remember I am not a doctor, and this information should not be considered to be medical advice. There will also be a link in the show notes to my Healthy Tips After 50 webpage, where you'll find additional information and resources as well as a free ebook. Well, that's it for now, and I'll look forward to talking to you next week.
This has been Healthy Tips After 50 with Susan Rosen. To stay on the cutting edge of the most effective health strategies, subscribe to this podcast and let us know what you thought of the show with a comment or like on iTunes. Visit healthytipsafter50.com for this episode's show notes, more resources, and free offers.